Whereas commercial, or at least my projects, I hand them over a design book with every single detail. Everything's like really, really detailed and explained, but they're usually like, I like this vision, let's go with it. So I don't want to say more decisive, but I want to say that, they basically get a design package. So it's not like they're looking to change out the newest trend in a few months. We sort of design for a classic feel so that it's long lasting.
Welcome to episode 106 of the AFT Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Levitt, and in this episode, I speak with Micky Klein, who is the CEO of Micky Klein Interiors. And this is an episode I've really enjoyed. I've known Micky for a long time through social media. We met at the LinkedIn Global Conference, and Micky has built an amazing business in the commercial and hospitality world. And we spoke about just the difference between residential and commercial design, the difference of clientele, the difference of product, the difference of the business structure, and what she's done to really grow that business, how she's catered to that market, and what she's done to really get her hands around design that's important to the client, understanding codes that are impacting that design and that environment, and so much good information about the marketing strategies that she's had and how she's built her business. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast, and I'm Brad Levitt, and today we have with us Micky Klein, who is CEO of Micky Klein Interiors. Welcome, Micky.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. I mean, Micky, we've known each other through social media, through LinkedIn and Instagram for many years now through this platform. Yeah. And you've done work and all the amazing things you're doing, especially with the little glam you bring to the commercial world.
Thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Well, I love that you do a lot of commercial. It's so much different than residential. A lot of the previous designers I've had, do a lot of residential. And the commercial world's so much different, especially hospitality. We've done some work for those clients, and those industries are so different. So just talk a little bit about the difference between, your commercial clients as opposed to your residential.
Okay. So as you know, because you're very familiar with this, residential it's all design's detail oriented, but residential is extremely, extremely detail oriented. And the client usually, by the time you implement any of their vision, would be like, and what about this? And what about that? And, there's constant, changes that they need to make. Whereas commercial, or at least my projects, I hand them over a design book with every single detail. Everything's like really, really detailed and explained, but they're usually like, I like this vision, let's go with it. So I don't want to say more decisive, but I want to say that, they basically get a design package. So it's not like they're looking to change out to the newest trend in a few months. We sort of design for a classic feel so that it's long lasting, basically, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, the emotion side's a little bit different, right? On the residential side, and we've dealt with this, where the client may go through Pinterest that night, they may go through House, they may see a post we've done on Instagram stories, and they'd be like, Brad, we need this for our house. And you're already like building, you're in construction, whereas commercial, it's more refined in the sense that, time is everything, right? Because businesses have to be open. And so the emotion isn't as keen as a residential project.
Correct. That's really what it is. I mean, it's just as detailed. So it has really nothing to do with the details. But you design for a long-lasting effect as opposed to something a little more trendy or, that owner's taste at the time.
So do you get a lot of changes then from your clients, change orders, product substitutions when doing commercial?
So before COVID, no.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't call them change orders. I would say that because the world is very different now. There's a lot of stuff on back order that when we go to put it on the spec sheet, it says 2 to 4 weeks, and all of a sudden they go to order it. And they're like, Micky, this is not in stock for another 12 weeks. And we're like, oh my gosh, really, it's out of our hands, it's out of their hands. But then we will have to either re-spec or reselect some, in some circumstances, and other circumstances, no, like they'll wait for the lead time. If it's a piece of furniture that they don't want to sacrifice that look, we'll leave that. But if it's a material like a flooring or a faucet, we'll try to like change that spec out. So really it's COVID, really. It's like just the industry. I feel like everyone is coming into this, like it's the biggest issue now.
It's weird, and it continues to change. It's so difficult, especially for you. I know, given the residential commercial, it doesn't matter. I mean, the lead time's long. You're still involved in the very beginning. So by the time ordering comes, it could completely change everything,
Yeah.
which creates, I'm sure, a lot of work for you and your team.
It does create a lot of work. But at the end of the day, we want our clients to be happy. And if they were happy with our original vision for this space, then we really want them to continue to be happy. And if that means we have to change a few things based on lead times or availability, then to us, we'd rather them be happy and our vision be carried out than, we suck it up.
Yeah. So how does the relationship differ in commercial with the contractor? Because the reason I ask is a lot of times in residential, the contractor's involved in the beginning and the architect's involved in the beginning. And so the designer is working with that team. And a lot of cases in commercial, that's not the case. Typically it is hard bid, right? Because they're looking at cost, they're looking at duration. The contractors will bid durations because, again, time's money, right, to get this property open. So how does that differ, your relationship with the contractor and design experience between residential and commercial?
Okay, so I would say that in some circumstances, the commercial, projects that we have, they are either the ones that bring us in, the contractors, or they are very heavily involved, meaning even though we're not a design build firm, the contractor will be there. The client already knows who they want to use, and they'll be there from the beginning. So it really just depends. Sometimes you're right. They just take my design book and hand it off and bid it out. But in other circumstances, really, I do walkthroughs with the contractors from the beginning because the client has that relationship with the contractor and wants to stick with them. So, we are all involved to where every meeting has the architect, the designer, and the contractor so that everyone's on the same page from day one.
So do you prefer one way or the other? I mean, how's it been for your relationship?
Oh, good question. I like it both ways. I'll tell you why. If the client has a really good relationship with the contractor, then they speak the same language. So it's almost more that I'm going with the contractor's, details and his advice or her advice. And we're really, we take over the project, whereas the client just gets to enjoy the end result and very little input. So I like that also. It makes my job a little easier. But the other way also, it makes it easier because once I know the client's happy with my design, they'll make sure that the contractor, carries out my design. So it's different. I don't prefer one or the other. I find them both when nothing's seamless, I find them both to be easy to manage because as long as there's an open communication,
Well, it just shows that you have a good design book then, because I mean, if the contractor's able to if they can take your design book, as a hard bidder, they could do it working with you through the design process. I mean, it shows that that information's there for the builder to build from.
Oh yeah. It's pretty detailed, like elevations, floor plans, RCPs, everything's in there. And, we'll tweak it as we go if they request more information or, depending on the project. Everything's really, really there. So the amount of questions that they come back with are extremely minimal.
And is there a ratio based on the commercial hospitality portfolio as opposed to residential that you have?
I would say we're more healthcare, commercial, hospitality divides up than we are residential. I want to say maybe there's 4 residential projects we take on a year, if that.
Yeah. So what was the strategy out of curiosity, to take that route, to go into the commercial and hospitality world?
It's interesting you asked that. I really did start off residential, and then we went into multifamily, and then we went straight into like healthcare, hospitality, commercial. I just felt like my visions for me personally were coming to life much faster in the commercial, hospitality, healthcare world than they were residential. Not only because things kept changing, but because I guess it is because they keep changing. Because clients, when they're doing a residential project, as long as it's not, a development that was already pre-made, they change their mind as they go. It's a lot of hand-holding, that kind of thing. Whereas a commercial project or healthcare, hospitality, I'm able to hand over the complete design book. Obviously, they're very involved along the way to see their renderings and to see their specs and their elevations. But I'm able to hand that over before construction starts. So it's almost a lot faster. Therefore, we have faster turnover time and we can take on more projects at the same time within a year.
It's interesting because I know I've heard you on other podcasts, and I think you're on Lou Anson. You talked about, okay, how many projects do you typically have?
Ooh. So it changes. And typically right now we are in the middle of 8 large projects and 2 small ones. By small, I mean like just specs. So I guess we're in the middle of 10 projects right now altogether. I have a very, very good team. Like, I'm nothing without them. Like, literally nothing without them. Like, I'm also a mom and a wife, and I have a life, outside. So for us to all work as a really tight-knit team, it really helps the whole process. And we're able to, be involved with all of the projects. We are all very involved with all the projects that go on. So that way, it's just a team. It makes things more smooth and enjoyable, actually.
It's pretty impressive. And you mentioned that just when you think about your business, and this is really important as, those listening as you strategize, what your personality, and it doesn't mean that you don't get along with clients, because you have to get along with all your clients, Micky. I mean, but you think of the strategy of what your talent suits and the communication and that process, and how do you set up your team? It is different. And with that commercial, as you mentioned, and we talked about this early on, the emotion's not as strong on the commercial world, and it doesn't mean that they actually they're going to expect a little bit more too, from professionalism, from design, from specification. You mentioned the RCPs, right? The reflected ceiling plans. I mean, these details are really key, because in addition to not only the design side and the execution, but you have to be really savvy too in regard to code. And if you're doing a restaurant, right, when you're dealing with food and FDA stuff, and and you have health inspectors that come in. This is a complete different than a residential house. And for you, it's even more challenging, where you have ADA a lot more prevalent, so bathroom
and
designs.
Every city's different. Every state is different.
Yeah.
Yep.
And occupancy, I mean, just so many variables. So how do you stay in front of all these variables, from occupancy to ADA to health inspections, and the fire marshal you're dealing with? I mean, there's just so many different challenges on the commercial side.
So first of all, I would say we're very heavy into the communication. Like, major, we're always in touch with either whoever point person is for that project, the contractor, like I said, the architect. So a lot of times when we get the architect's files, a lot of that information is in there, but then we go and recheck. So we will not only use the internet, but we'll go and try to find every resource that we can find to make sure when we're designing, we are within, the parameters of where we need to be per state and city. And then comes the decisions on what style they want. Some styles don't work with, like you said, like code and regulation. It's a revolving door constantly, like with what we learn and the knowledge that we have to bring in. So we're constantly per state, per project, oh, wait, that's not this state. We have to go back and do our homework and really, really zone in on what the client needs.
And what's interesting, where it's even more challenging, how do you stay on top of when you start thinking about finishes, right? Are they sanitary, and especially if you're designing kitchens or bars and other aspects of commercial, applications. So do you work with your vendors on that to understand, what products would be more savvy to use, in a commercial design?
Yeah, so my team, I would say, they're very into their lunch and learns.
That's what I was going to ask. The lunch and learns is that continuing education, right?
Oh, yeah. My team really does like that. And not only does it give them a break in the day, they get to really sharpen their knowledge on all of the materials that we use. I'm very into the antimicrobial stuff. Even, I'll try to find a pattern that goes with each design. But I'm very into, I want it to be able to be cleaned and sterilized, whether it's materials we use on walls, we'll do a vinyl. That way it can be washed. On floors also, we try very hard that it can be sterilized, with whatever cleaner they're using. Abrasive cleaners, obviously. Mm-hmm. Same with materials that we put on seating. I need it to be a vinyl or a leather it has to be more of a vinyl, that they can use harsh, chemicals to clean it and sterilize and make sure that it doesn't ruin its integrity with time as well. So
I love that you share that, because this is where, for those listening, they don't realize how complex the day is for Micky Klein and her team, that when you're thinking about especially with COVID, that's been enhanced, right? I mean, as you're thinking commercial space, it's, as you mentioned, the microbial, you have, the cleaning and sanitizing, right? If I could say that word right. And then you have right? You have to, yeah. Well, you have abrasive cleaners, right? You have to come in and do these really deep cleans. And it's not just the flooring. It's not just the wainscoting. It's not just the accent walls, but the furniture, right? The FF&E, as you think about multiple people coming in, whether it be an office or restaurant. I mean, this is really important.
The traffic. Yeah.
The traffic.
Yeah. It's funny you're saying that because there's a lot of materials now that would look like wood or the custom millwork, that kind of stuff. And we can use different materials that hold up to that impact that look exactly like wood. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there to, incorporate as per the client's needs, the traffic, impact, cleaning materials. But I am very, even before COVID, my personality, call it whatever you want. I won't label it as OCD, but I'm very into cleanliness. And I would say I would want it to be, all of my designs, extremely functional. So, if we're going to be in a situation where I'm putting these gorgeous countertops and all of that, I want to make sure that it can be cleaned properly, even before COVID. Otherwise, it just, what's the point? What am I doing? So.
Right. I mean, you want to make sure clients are making a good investment. You're making sure your design stands the test of time. So how often are you involved in the FF&E portion, the furniture, the fixtures and equipment, with the vendor?
Okay. So we spec out everything, every single thing, furniture, lighting, door handles, case goods, everything. Everything is selected by us. We just don't do their purchasing. They'll do their own purchasing.
Okay. So interesting. So with that, with the furniture, so whether it be a hotel or hospitality or maybe multifamilies you mentioned early on in your career, so you're going to do the specification, but you're not handling, all the shipping, the freight, the storage, and then install. That's something they're taking on, but you're just working from the design aspect.
Correct.
Well, that must be nice because now you don't have to store that because it can be very complicated, especially on a big project.
Yes. There's liability, there's complications, obviously now even more with COVID, all that kind of stuff. So we are a design firm. We do just the design. I know other design firms do it differently. This is the way we do it. I guess that's what makes us very different than other design firms. But it works for us. And like you said, now I can get faster lead times with our design books and that kind of stuff.
Well, and to that point, Micky, and then really you have to think about what makes you successful as a company, right, for your client. Right. And I shouldn't say in your defense, but to your point here is that a lot of these commercial developers, they have access to that anyways, right? I know, I work with clients that own Marriott's and, Marriott has their own, vendors that they purchase from, right? And really the designer, you would select those and say, this is the aesthetic we're looking, and they're doing that anyway. So
right.
It's not really conflict of interest. It's just you're putting them in an opportunity to be successful, and it makes you just in and out.
Correct.
Yeah, which is super nice.
Easier. Yeah.
So how is it more difficult, have you found, to manage the budget? Because with budget and commercial, when you're looking at large scale and a lot of furnishings, how difficult is that to manage, for the client to make sure that your design will fit their budget?
Okay, so it's not so difficult because what they get in our design book are extremely detailed specs. So if you're going to tell me you want a chair, not only are we going to pick the finish, the material, the fabric, the make, the model, we're also going to be getting the prices for you. If we get a discount, you get the discount as the client. So all of that's on our spec sheets. It's very detailed, to the point where they know how much it's going to cost. Now, if they can get it cheaper, that's amazing, and they just save more money. But going through our design books, it's so detailed that they should know exactly where they're at, according to their budget. Obviously, we know the number where they should be, and sometimes they go over based on the changes they make, but we try to stick within their budget because we already know their pricing.
And how long does it take you to create that design book for your client in the planning phase?
Oh, good question. I would say, on average, 3 to 4 months, depending on the size of the project.
And what is, and for size of scale, I know it differs. I mean, it's really hard to compare one commercial project to another because just they're so different, the time frame. I mean, how do they differ in square footage, in demand, in size?
Yeah, so right. So I would say the larger, the more areas that there are, it depends on the scope of work. That would take a little longer. I would say in the 3 to 4 month range. If it's a smaller project, it goes much faster. It really, we try to have as fast, quick turnover as possible. It's in our best interest and also the client because they get their product much faster. So to us, if we're doing a small commercial project, it's going to go pretty quick based on, we try to get all the information that they have and their vision before we even begin.
So what keeps you up at night, stress-wise, from work?
Ooh, honest?
Yeah.
My kids. I said it. I really have a good team, I must say. In the beginning, when I first started out, it was work. It was like, oh my God, how am I going to juggle this? What am I going to do? What if the client's not happy? You live and you learn, and I learned from my mistakes. I'm very, very into criticism. Obviously, I find it refreshing because the more black and white my client can be and tell me exactly what their vision is, what they do like, what they don't like, I'm able to give them the product that they really envision from the get-go. So if my client's going to come to me and be like, hey, I don't like the color on the walls, I'll be like, no problem, let's change it. I don't take it personally. That having that mindset really eliminates a lot of the stress. Juggling my projects, like I said, I have my team. I have, 5 amazing ladies that work here, and they're my everything. Like without them, I could not do what I do on a regular basis. We all help each other. So I know that if there's a deadline, we have our communication and, we pick up each other's pieces. So the way we have it set up here really, really, really works. Like I said, I probably wouldn't sleep if I didn't have them. My kids, on the other hand, I would love a team for each child.
Right.
Calling the troops over here, but no, it's good.
I can relate with that. We have teenagers. I have junior high and elementary and preschool. So it's a different challenge at every level, at every age, right? And we're dealing with different things.
2 high school and 1 elementary. So it's, whew,
yeah.
it's
So
great.
the challenge of high school. It's a tough age.
Oh my God. We'll leave it at that. We will leave it as it's a tough age.
Well, it's funny. You think just as you apply that to life, though, right? It's funny. I'm sure you can attest to this, Micky, that for you and your profession, right? If you hang around successful people, entrepreneurs, like-minded business people, right? That really sets the tone for you as a business owner, right? And that's what you are. And, as a wife, mother, business owner, this is what you excel in. And same for our kids, right? If our kids have good friends and a good crowd, right? And people they're hanging around with, it does bring some comfort. And that's, I think, the challenge most of us, deal with as parents.
Yeah. No, I know also, I feel like the world has changed so much since we were children that there's so much at their fingertips, like social media, all that kind of stuff. So just in general, there's a lot that even I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not that old, but I don't understand how to do any of this. What's going on? So it's a lot. We're also adapting and evolving with them, and they're just really good at keeping up with the times.
Yeah, I know. It is. I mean, you think about bullying when we dealt with kids and now social bullying. I mean, it's a whole different.
Yeah, bullying back then was swing a punch, walk away, sticks and stones. Now it is next level. I'm like, how are kids this mean? Why is it even available? So.
Yeah, it makes it really tough, but getting back to the business side for you, you mentioned you have 5 amazing team members there at Micky Klein Interiors. So how do you delegate the responsibility? Are there certain focuses each of them have? How have you really hit your stride as far as, setting the expectations for your team?
Right. So I have a senior designer. Once I had that assistant, present, it was much easier to delegate. Whereas I like to focus on everyone's strengths. So if one is better at speccing, whereas the other one's better at elevations, and the other one's better at the design aspect of pulling all the materials together. I like everyone to focus on what their strong points are. Therefore, it's I guess it eliminates a lot of confusion because now that we have this almost assembly line, I would say, it just makes the project more enjoyable for everyone because they get to really zone in on what they actually enjoy because that's their strength. That's really, it's really what we do.
Well, it's really smart. I mean, you think that assembly line, and it's not that this is a production, system.
No.
It's just what you're doing is you're optimizing. You understand what the talents are of each of the individuals. You put them in a
Yeah.
position to be successful. You empower them, and now that
Yeah.
system works really
Yeah.
effectively.
And
So,
everyone likes to do what they're good at. They don't like to sit there and struggle all day
yeah.
at work. So
Well, that's a key to being a good leader too, and a good owner is that if you understand what they're good at, and you could put them in that wheelhouse that they're really good at, you're going to be more successful as a company and
yes,
brand, anyways.
totally.
So how when you think about hiring, though, I know for us, culture is really big, and a lot of contractors and designers and architects I speak with, one of their biggest challenges right now is hiring, even for the labor pool. So when you're hiring someone, or even maybe the example of the 5 you've brought on, what do you look for? If I'm a designer looking to work for Micky Klein Interiors, like what is it that you would expect or be looking for?
Okay, so personally, I like that whoever comes to the team is capable theoretically at doing everything, capable at doing renderings, capable at choosing selections, capable at specing elevations. I need them to really know how very well to do everything. So the skills of basic interior design, that's what I'm looking for. Now, obviously, everyone has their strengths. So whatever we are either lacking or need more of, um, that's really what I'll zone in on. So if you have all of the skills, in interior design, and we're looking for someone who is just amazing at elevations that can keep up with larger scale projects, bigger buildings, then that's really the questions that I would gear towards in the interview. I can't speak English either. I'll just see what our needs are at the time when I'm hiring.
It's good. So it's someone that's versatile in the sense that they understand at least all the different aspects of the design process.
Right.
But then as you start to see their talents, and you're going to hone in and put them where they specialize.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to see their portfolio. I need to know where their previous job was, that kind of thing. So I can see what style, if I also really do look for speed. Meaning, if they can catch the design concept per project, and understand how to execute it fast or in a timely manner, that is also a big thing. Because since I said we do a lot of fast turnarounds, quick turnarounds, lead times are really quick. I need them to keep up with that pace.
And I love that you share that. I don't think most people realize that have not done a lot of commercial. When you think about time and speed, I mean, they're fast. They're fast moving, especially, builders of mine that I work with, that build schools. And for whatever reason, it's always like, okay, the kids are out of school. We got to be done. We got to build this gymnasium, or we got to do this addition. Or like now I have a friend of mine that's building a school, and of course they just got the finance approval now, and they want to be open for next school year, right? Which in Arizona is in July. I mean, end of July, they start school. And you start thinking, you got to build an entire school campus in 9 months, right? And time's money. They got to be open for the school year, and because it delays at the county and
how do you
everywhere.
do that then?
It's very complicated, and so I'm glad you asked that. So on the commercial scale, it's a little bit different. So when they're having these meetings, they actually the builder that I'm working with, it's a different mentality. So in most cases, you'll sit down and you'll bid a project, and you'll create a schedule. This is different. What they're doing is, as they're sitting down for their presentation with the owner of the school, each of the general contractors came in with their sub base. So they'd come in with the steel company. They'd come in with the concrete company. They'd come in with all their vendors, like the key ones, the really big ones that are involved.
Right.
Yeah. So they'd have everyone there. They'd have an operation representative from each company, director of operations. And then as they sat for their presentation, they would dictate, it was truly a design build. So they would say, this is what we're going to do for the steel. This is the product we're going to do. This is how we're going to engineer it, because we can actually get this in time with COVID. We can put it together. And then here's the crews, here's the manpower we're going to dedicate to this project. So what ends up happening is the selection wasn't so much on price. I mean, price is important, don't get me wrong, but it was more on what subcontractors can come in with the best, not only VE, but as far as available product, and then what's the manpower they have, and then how are you going to get this schedule done 9 months. Then it's really complicated for the team because they're working essentially 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. And so they have to stage it where, okay, we have different wages at different times of the day, different hours, but it's a revolving cycle, right? And then they get the municipality involved, where they essentially have an inspector assigned to this project, or a couple inspectors, so that it's not like hey, I have to call an inspection for tomorrow. Yeah, they're not waiting 24 hours for an inspection. They can call an inspection, and within an hour, someone's coming by and inspecting it.
Wow.
And even 9
That's
inspections.
Incredible.
It's crazy. So it's an amazing feat. To me, it's amazing because I've seen that. I've walked projects where they've been building these schools, and it happens a lot, especially with charter schools, and people travel around the country and do this. But to me, it's a lot of headache. It's a lot of stress.
I would definitely say it sounds stressful, but it also sounds so rewarding when that gets completed within the time that they allow for it.
It is.
It must feel so good.
Yeah, it's fun. And what they do as well, they'll put up a time-lapse camera, and they'll have that overshoot in the school. And so you think this rapid build, how fast it's going in. They will say, look, the reality is we'll get C of O. So they're going to have the campus up and operating. They'll have the buildings, the air conditioning, of course. They'll have the FF&E. But a lot of the landscape, and there's certain aspects of the campus that won't be complete, like the football areas.
Right.
I mean, some of the stuff's just ongoing. It'll be the next year, right? But a new school, it's okay. It takes time as they're building through it.
Right. That's really incredible.
Well, I'm sure you've been through your circumstance too. As you mentioned, speed. I mean, this is really key because you're going to have someone, if they have to open up, their hospitality suite or their office or whatever. I mean, this is really key. And so they're going to put a lot of pressure on you, Micky, to get through design and turn.
Well, usually I'm brought in before the construction. So that's why I was wondering how they do that with the designer. Is the designer brought in before? But you're saying it's they have to present and then they just press go.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So what they did in this case is they knew that here we are in September, right? So they knew that they're going to get a permit in September. So all this interviewing was happening back in April and May. That way they could work through some of the VE with the engineer, right? Structurally, how they're going to design it with their consultants. Right. And the designer was involved in, figuring out the purchasing of all the equipment in the office and the classrooms. I mean, everything goes into that. So that was all happening back in May, and now that's on order, that's going and in design, and now they can hit the ground running. So it's a very complicated process.
It is. But it works.
But they all are. And it's no different. I mean, here at the local college at ASU, Arizona State, right? They're building these multifamily units, and, time's money, right? They have to get it open by these dates. And it's incredibly complex because I don't think what most people realize right now in this market, at least from my point of view, is what's difficult about high-end multifamily, and you've done this, Micky, is that you have to have a large crew size because it's multifamily, there could be 100 rooms, 200 rooms, 300 rooms.
Yeah.
So you have to have companies that have the capability to staff it, but
the manpower, right?
But you also have to have more quality, more quality craftsmanship. This isn't an apartment, and that's where it's really tough right now. I know that people building multifamily are having that challenge because they don't have either subcontracting companies that have enough power, and then also have the quality right?
Control. Right.
And that's really tough because trying to hit those timelines and stay out of any issues with, I don't want to say class action, but just issues where the quality's not there, right? It's a tough pill to swallow right now.
It's true.
Now, we're super excited to welcome one of our new sponsors to the podcast, Pella Windows. And this is even more exciting because we use Pella in so many of our projects, nearly all of them. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers, because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. And now let's get back into the episode. And so from your side, Micky, going back to the design side, how emotional do the clients get? Like if it's an office, I'm sure it differs if it's an office or it's a personal use or hospitality restaurant. I mean, how does that differ from the client, how involved they get?
We always have a kickoff meeting. We're always super in touch. I want to hear what their style is. I want to hear their vision. And then we tend to present to them renderings or mood boards with whatever we feel would fit the space based on either their vision or their wish list or different design elements that they've mentioned. And once they okay it, it's pretty smooth sailing after that. They are really involved. I like for them to be involved. I like to alleviate the headache at the end and more, deal with the criticism if they have any, or their comments or their feedback from the beginning. That way we know we are doing exactly what the client wants. So they're pretty involved. I force them to be involved or a representative from their company if they are not available as owners to be involved. But I like that. So
and it's really smart because it helps you make sure you're going down the right path, right? From the beginning, from design.
Yes.
And so from your side,
I know that they'll be happy at the end of the day. I don't want to give them a product that they're like, this is not what we wanted. So.
Right. That customer satisfaction is really key. And so is there a certain aesthetic that attracts you more that you like the most, or if a client's going down that road that you get really excited about?
Of course, as a designer, everyone has their own taste. So my personal taste would be a modern transitional glam. You could tell from my Instagram inspo that I post. That's more my flavor. Now, most of my clients don't like that, actually, which is fine. And as long as I can make them happy with giving them the design, that they like for their space, I'm happy. But really, I also understand that my taste is not everyone else's taste. And I can appreciate other design, trends and design elements and, styles. So for me, I don't really care what the client's taste is. If they're happy, I'm happy. There are clients that you won't even begin to want to see at the end of the day because I'm like, that is so not my style. I can't believe I just gave that to them, but they're so happy and that's exactly what they wanted. So it's their place, it's their project. So if they're happy, I'm happy.
See, but that's nice. It's nice to work with designers that also have that mentality, right? Because I'm sure it's difficult from your side where you have the training and the background, the expertise where, you're getting counsel on, but at the same time, it's you want to implement their vision, their design, and still try to make it as, as best of a presentation and professional as you can.
Right. And I'm very into the practical aspect of the project. So if a client is saying, oh, they really want this color, blah, 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 and it doesn't come in the material that they need for that exact area, I will steer them away from it. I'll be like, oh, if your favorite color is green and this is what you want to implement, let's do it with art or accessories or chair fabric, whereas your counters aren't green because obviously the material that we need to use for that space doesn't come in those colors or patterns. So, I try to give them their vision and their wish list, but also being practical and making sure it lasts them long enough where they're not replacing it in a year from now.
Well, what's interesting too about your background, so you have a degree from the Art Institute of Michigan. So how has that impacted your design career, and were you always, keen on going into interior design?
So, no, I wasn't. I think when I was young, I was very into fashion. I loved shoes. Anywhere I can buy a pair of shoes. I didn't care if it was from Payless. I just wanted shoes, lots and lots of shoes. So I really always wanted to be a shoe designer. I did not go to fashion school. So I ended up realizing that since I was artistic and I do like the finer things in life when it comes to being in a space that makes sense. I'm very into logical design. So if I'm in a place that's nice and it makes sense and it feels right, I wanted to carry that out. So I think I was just good at, remodeling my house or picking different accessories. And that trickled out to helping friends with their houses and that kind of stuff. Before I actually went to school, I did an internship. So that really set the tone if it was something I really wanted to do, which I saw that it was. That's really what it was. But no, my true passion was and is still very much shoes. Like, I'm very into my shoes. We'll just leave it at that. It might be borderline addiction, but
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I can relate. I like that. So, as far as getting into design, did you end up working for a firm? Did you end up just going out on your own? I mean, how was that transformation to, here you are 12 years later?
Right. So I did that internship. After I went to school, I did very few projects at one time just to not feel stressed. I was a young mom, little kids. It was just something that I slowly built up, very slowly. I never worked for anyone else because I was always into being around for my kids. I think I never bit off more than I could chew, I guess is what I'm saying. I was always very good at understanding what my capabilities are. So as a one-man show or one-woman show, I wasn't able to take on 8 projects because I was just doing it by myself. I don't think I ever could really work for someone else when you're like juggling 2 babies literally, and it wasn't for me, I guess, of how I started my career and where I was in life. It just didn't make sense for me personally.
Yeah. And it's always amazing to me, like for someone such as yourself, Micky, that, self-made entrepreneur, if you will, where you didn't work for someone else. It's not like you had a lot of background, as far as here's how you cost, here's how you order, here's how you set up vendor accounts, right? Here's the design process, here's how you do CAD, all the things that go into being a designer. And so it's that quick learning. So, you rewind back 12 years ago, what do you wish you would have known then, right? Starting from the beginning, maybe for the organization side or the vendor side or how you do your pricing.
Good question. I wish I knew everything I know today.
Yeah.
But I will say it was a lot of, trip, fall, get back up again. And I do feel extremely accomplished knowing that I taught myself that along with the help of others. Like I said all along, I like to hear the criticism. I like to hear, no, maybe you can do it better this way. I guess living and learning through my own mistakes. So while what's something I wish I knew everything because life would have been a lot smoother. But I also really appreciate how I came to where I am today, knowing that a lot of it was me, and I can honestly say with the help of others and giving me advice. But at the end of the day, I know that I woke up and I decided to keep going instead of giving up when the frustration kicked in or the lack of knowledge kicked in. So.
Well, and you haven't stopped there. I mean, here you are, you're getting into design, you're working for your close network. It expands, you grow, you're hiring, here you are 12 years later with this amazing firm in operation doing these incredible commercial projects that we love following on social media. And now, the venture continues where you're starting your own textile line. So where does that entrepreneurship mentality and desire to say, okay, let's continue to expand into this realm?
Oh, drive. Where does it come from? It's just, I guess, my inner voice saying like, now what? What's next? Now what? What are you going to do now? I don't know. It's really, it comes from within me. No one's pushing me. I don't like to compare or look at what other people do. I just really like to say, what are you ready for, Micky? What can you handle? What can you bite off that won't be more than you can chew? Type of thing.
How does it differ? Just the business operation itself as you're going into the textile design, company as opposed to the, fee for service people, side of design. I mean, how the companies differ. Is it more challenging, one or the other?
Well, it's new for me. Like I don't know enough about it to not have other people behind me guiding me and, giving me advice and telling me what would be best. I guess it's a lot of having the right people backing you and also understanding I guess, understanding the process more than I understand. So people that I can trust to guide me to where I need to be. So I guess it's a little similar when it comes to a team. But I also know that I'm not fully in control. There are things outside of my control that, I can and can't be on top of. So.
Well, that's key of being, a good CEO, right? As you mentioned, I mean, that's your role now, but being a good CEO, you understand that there are people that have talents that are really exceptional, right? That, and you put them in those places, as you mentioned, you're doing right now. And even with the textile, you're going to rely on them, as they move forward with that. It's no different than what, I do. I have someone in our pre-construction department that is really good at detailing plans and red lines and going through all these different sheets and dissecting them from the architect, and other people in the field, right, that are really good. And so you put the right people in place, and that's their expertise. That's what they're good at. And you rely on that because that's what allows, our company's only as successful as every person that's involved, all the way down.
It's so true. And it's also knowing other people's strengths and knowing your own weaknesses. So you can have someone that has whatever your weakness is being their biggest strength. So it's complementary.
So have you found any benefit? Are you running your social media, or who does all of your social?
So believe it or not, I'm very heavily involved. Very time consuming, as you would tell, because you follow me on Instagram. There are weeks that I can't post. I can't physically do everything. And then there's weeks where I'm like, no, I think I'm going to take a break and focus on, other things that are on my schedule. It's time consuming, but it's also very rewarding. I do have help, but it's always me that's going to respond, answer, and be involved. So
have you found benefit? I mean, have you received any job leads? I mean,
yeah. A lot, actually. A lot of people have come to me either by seeing, something on social media that I posted, LinkedIn, Instagram, or, word of mouth that someone knows me and we've connected through Instagram or LinkedIn. So I do find them super beneficial.
So, and the reason I want to ask you about LinkedIn, Micky, is honestly, you don't see a ton of, designers are very prevalent on Instagram, right? Especially Pinterest. And you see that. You don't see a whole lot that are very active on LinkedIn, whereas you have been. And so what was your strategy, or was there one, or have you just found LinkedIn to be incredibly beneficial for your business?
So I started off with Instagram. I didn't really know much about LinkedIn. And I was actually told by a friend, Micky, if you want connections to the decision makers, you really need to be on LinkedIn. So I was very slow in the beginning. I'm like, I don't even know what this is, way above my pay grade. And then once I got familiar with it, I realized that they were right, that, a lot of, I would say LinkedIn is more for the decision makers, the business aspect of it. And Instagram is more the visualization, that kind of thing. So vendors, also decision makers, but more, vendors or other business relationships outside of the decision makers.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the decision makers, because on LinkedIn, you have a direct connect, as you have, and especially with you being in the hospitality world, you can connect with all these executives, CEOs, directors, right, that are on that platform. And it's just that constant fulfillment of, hey, you're putting these visuals out there, making your content, and then you're staying in front of them.
Right. So that's really...
And how about the blogging? I know you do blogging too, and I know a lot of businesses have been really successful on the blogs. And one I thought was really interesting, you did one where you're talking about some of your favorite aesthetics that aren't used enough, from organic and Scandinavian and boho eclectic, and transitional. And we spoke a little bit about your favorite one. How's the blogging enhanced the business or helped you as well with the bandwidth?
I think it just shares the knowledge that I've accumulated over all the years to show that, everything plays a role when you're designing. So the more knowledge I have on how things work together, or what's missing, or newest trends, or different design elements or styles, the more I can help my client execute their vision. So I guess it just shows the knowledge that I try to, take on or educate myself with. I guess that's what I would say the blog really is for.
Which is good. And blogs are really helpful, as you mentioned. It's funny. We've done some blogs. We're doing a building science house now, right? That is the net zero. It's the home of the year. And there's some really neat content that we've put out there that we're working with, the consultants on this project. And it's amazing because we learn too as we're writing the blogs, we're doing the research and doing the build, of
Right.
course, but it also is another avenue for people to look at that and see what others are doing. And so we talked about this before, that continuing education as a designer is really important, especially for
Right.
you in the world that you work in. How do you continue to stay in front of design trends and design aesthetics and products? I mean, there's just so much out there.
So there's a lot, like I said, we had mentioned, a lot of lunch and learns.
Yeah.
No, I do like how the vendors come in and educate and show us the newest, greatest, most functional, all the different elements that go into design. But I also, as codes and regulation, everything's changing. Things just keep changing. So really, like I said, I like to be in touch with the other trades that are on the project just for our education, that kind of thing. The more knowledge I can get per project or client, the better the project turns out. So it's just always, I think willing is the word, always willing to learn. It just helps educate you along the way.
Yeah, I agree. And so right now, what are other things? I know being a mom, super busy with kids, from high school down, what are other things that, you and your family like to do for fun?
Ooh, we like the beach, the pool, outside, barbecue. We're a little low key like that. Not so into, I guess we don't travel so much. We live now that we don't live in Michigan anymore, we live now where we always love to vacation. So all three of my kids love to be by the ocean. So we'll do that. What else do we do? I don't know. High schoolers like to have fun, hang out, shop, go out to eat, that kind of thing. I don't know. Movies, arcades, the typical family stuff. And we don't really have the need to travel so much because everyone really in our home likes to walk across the street to the ocean.
Yeah. Well, if you're that close to the ocean, there's not a huge reason to travel, right? Most of us are
I
going
would
to the
say it's
ocean.
not even a 10-minute walk to the ocean. So
Yeah, that is the one thing I miss. I grew up in San Diego, so that was as a teenager growing up in San Diego, it was fun. We go to the beach all the time, and
yeah,
especially in the summer after school, we'll go down there because in the evening after school, everyone's leaving, all the families are gone, everyone's gone. It's not so crowded, so it's easy to get a
right.
parking spot.
And here in Florida, there's a lot of like the outdoor malls that are near the water. It's nice.
Yeah, there's a
It's
lot to
nice.
do in Florida for
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot to do.
So what's upcoming and exciting? I know you have some amazing projects, that we need to be watching. I mean, what are you excited about right now that you're working on?
Oh, what am I excited that I'm working on? We finished a pizza store. So that's exciting because they're going to start construction soon. They just got their permits.
So on the pizza store, is this their first one? Is it part of a franchise?
It's part of their franchise. They're going to take this design and, I guess integrate it to all their other locations. So it's super exciting that I get to have my touch or our touch on all their locations. So I'm really excited to see that come to life because that's here in Florida, close by. What else is exciting? A lot of healthcare, a lot of nursing home upgrades, construction, that kind of thing. It's exciting to see residents and the elderly get to enjoy something new and fresh and enjoyable and clean. So I like seeing those projects come to life.
The versatility
They're
is,
fulfilling.
yeah, it's amazing, Mickey, because having worked in construction in some of these, I mean, just the clientele that you're working and operating with, from a restaurant, that's part of a franchise and has other chains, to, a nursing facility, to an office. I mean, the clientele and complexity, I mean, I would imagine that just inspires you every day because it's just a totally different feel for each client that you're working with and who they're catering to.
Right, right. I guess it helps that I can cater to all of those industries, I would say. And I guess my business model works for all of them, which also makes it a lot easier to just do what we're good at, which is the design, and, try to carry out their vision for their project.
And it's, going back to just one thing I wanted to ask you that I fell to earlier was, as you start thinking about business development, I mean, one thing that's a little difficult if you're a residential builder, build a suit, right? As you get a new project, you may cheer for a second, but you're like, okay, well, what's coming next, right? It's that pipeline you're continuing. And what's tough is every client's new, right? It's you may have repeat clients, but they may be 3, 5, 7 years down the road. Whereas, sometimes in commercial, you can get on board with a developer or a pizza restaurant, as you mentioned, where there's going to be continual work. I mean, do you find that your business development chain is help going commercial?
Either returning clients like that if we executed one, they're like, okay, we have a bunch more for you. Others is, word of mouth. If I've done one that one owner likes, they'll tell a friend or they'll tell someone else in their industry, oh, she was really great, she did this. And they're like, oh, that's perfect for me. That's what I need. It's really word of mouth, but it's also the business relationship where a lot of my clients have multiple locations that they would need design for. So thank God, our returning clients really do help getting new clients. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. In fact, I had an architect on many episodes ago, Eric Peterson with PHX here in town, and he mentioned that he did a golf course, like a clubhouse, and it went really well, and it's a pretty tight-knit community. So now these golf course clubhouses, these operators in other parts of the country, like, hey, we did this clubhouse with this architecture firm, they're phenomenal. And so it just exploded, that word of mouth, because as they know that you've been successful, Micky, doing this nursing facility, well, as the other ones come, it's easier transition, recommendation to bring you on.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. That's what helps, like the business relationships, basically.
Well, it's been amazing, Micky. I mean, you're so talented. I love following all your stuff on LinkedIn and Instagram and everything you're doing. And so for those listening, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Micky Klein Interiors, Micky_Klein_Interiors, and Micky Klein on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page also, Micky Klein Interiors. My website, mickyklein.com. There's no E in Micky, and that's it. MICKYKLEIN.
Oh, that's awesome, Micky. Well, thank you so much for making time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.